We need leadership that's going to stand up for our communities first. It's going to stand up to make sure that our kids get the education that they deserve, that our schools are open and available and provide the services that the kids need, that we focus on building more opportunities for education for our communities here in San Diego. I have a vision to actually do those things in our community. We need to make sure that we continue to make equity a priority, but not just talk about it, not just the lip service, but actually make the change. We need to focus on providing opportunities for home ownership. That is how you can build true wealth for our families. That's something that's not available. Yes, we need to make affordable housing available. That's for sure, but also opportunities for home ownership for our families. So there is a lot of work that remains to be done. Homelessness is getting worse, not better, even though we're spending way more money than ever before. We need to tackle that issue seriously. We need to make sure that people get into facilities of care so that they can be actually taken care of and not just cycle in and out of jails every 72 hours to remain on the streets. There is more work to be done. I'm doing this not because I'm desperate to be elected. I live in the district that I grew up in, and I'm staying in this district, and I'm proud to represent this community. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you for your statements, candidates. So that we can establish a baseline of sorts, please answer the following questions with a yes, no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion to offer. Yes, no, or I don't know. If there's reason for me to follow up, I'll follow up, but just looking for a yes, no, or I don't know. First, we'll take you, David. If elected, will Black Lives Matter in your policy decision-making? Yes, no, or
yes,
I don't
it
know.
always has.
Yes, no, or I don't know. Georgette.
Yes.
Georgette, is systemic institutional structural racism a problem in our state?
Yes.
David Alvarez. Yes, no,
yes.
or I don't know. Thank you. Are you knowledgeable? And it seems to me, based on your opening statements, about specific issues of concern raised by and or affecting our region's Black communities that you can address as a lawmaker representing the 80th Assembly District. David Alvarez.
That's also yes, no?
Georgette. Yes, all yes, no, or I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I heard yours, Georgette. All right, so this is a partisan seat. You're both Democrats and will likely hold many of the same policy positions. So please tell us, 2 minutes, please, what specific qualifications and record of achievement distinguish you from other candidates in this race? We'll start with you, David Alvarez.
Thank you. Again, I'm really concerned about the state of education. As a father of two in our local school district, in middle school and in elementary school, I've seen the loss of learning. We need to focus on making sure that education resources are provided to our schools, to our teachers, to our families, and the kids who have really, unfortunately, fallen behind as a result of the last few years. That is one of the things I want to focus on. Two, I want to make sure that we address the homeless issue and that we get serious with it, and that we pass laws that require individuals who need to go and get the care that they need into facilities of care, commit them to those facilities so that they actually get the treatment that they need, whether it's 30, 60, 90 day of treatment. The current system is not working. We got to change those laws. We can't just move people from one side of the street to the other. And so I want to take this issue head on and seriously. Third, I've lived and represented it and did not move to run for the seat. I have lived in this community my whole life. I've represented in this community. And so especially the last several years that I've left office, continuing to work on these issues is what distinguishes me.
Thank you. Did we lose you, or have you concluded your remarks?
You said 1 minute.
I'm sorry, I'm just having a little trouble hearing you.
That was just 1 minute to respond to that, right?
You actually had two, but what we'll do is I'm going to repeat the question one more and give you a minute to respond if you would specifically. What specific qualifications and record of achievement distinguish you from other candidates in this race? You have 1 minute, please.
Well, I hope the audio was okay and you heard my first minute of response.
You did.
But I was going to say that even since leaving office, I've been involved and helped create a group called the Latino Equity Council, where we stand with Black Lives Matters and other communities to ensure that equity is just not something that individuals in power just say, but actually do. I was very critical and continue to be of the failure of the county and the state to respond to our emergency of COVID. Our Black and Brown communities were left behind. They weren't being tested. They did not have access to the vaccines. It was a disgrace what was happening in our communities, and people were not speaking up. I sure did. I will always speak up and stand up no matter who is in power to make sure that our communities are protected, defended, and that they are actually served. And that is something that I've always held and that I will continue to hold. That distinguishes me. I don't shy away. I don't get afraid by people who
Thank
might
you.
threaten me. And I'll stand up for our community. Thank you.
Hi, David. Thank you. Georgette, I'll ask the question again. Please tell us what specific qualifications and record of achievement distinguish you from other candidates in this race.
Yeah, thank you for that
And
question.
you have
So,
2 minutes, please.
okay. Yeah, so, I'll start with the latest. Leaving the council as the council president, I worked extremely closely with Council Member Monica Montgomery on responding to the request that we defund the police. We did several things in that effort. One was establishing earmarking budget money to establish the Office of Race and Equity, which is now taking shape at the city of San Diego. I work to try to prevent the closure of one of our libraries in the Mount Hope area that actually during that budget season, Kevin Faulkner was proposing to close, which I knew was going to impact our community. So fought hard to ensure that we kept it open. I gave seed money to the educational complex to start the possibility of establishing a Black designation to preserve our history. So I was happy that I have done that. We eliminated the chokehold. That was something that was a response to the request of really holding our police accountable, which trickled down to other counties and other cities to eliminate the chokehold as a tool to respond to in our communities. I work closely as well with Mayor Kevin Faulkner and my colleagues to establish a fund to support our Black, Hispanic, and Asian chamber during COVID to support our small businesses, which was something that was really, really important. I was able to bring forward a update to the affordable housing ordinance, an ordinance that was in existence since the adoption by Council Member Tony Atkins when she introduced this ordinance. And this is the type of leadership that I'll bring to Sacramento to work in behalf of our communities.
Thank you very much. Next question. Former Assembly Member Gonzalez leaves an important legacy. We'll ask Georgette to answer this first question. What will you carry forward if voters elect you to complete her term? And what differences can voters anticipate? You'll have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so, gotta recognize that former Lorena Gonzalez, as you stated, Cheryl, did leave a strong legacy in Sacramento. She changed the conversation to uplift workers. That's something that is really important, specifically being that this district is a working class district. And we need to ensure that we continue fighting for workers, but also recognizing some of the other challenges that our community is facing. South Bay is one of the most polluting communities because we have the heavy industrial, because we have the border. So uplifting environmental justice is going to be something that I'll continue to work on and ensuring that we're bringing relief and that we're reducing air quality, that we are also addressing the housing crisis, not only just from ensuring that we're building affordable housing, but also increasing our community wealth and ensuring that our community members, both our Black, Indigenous, Brown communities, are entering into home ownership, which is a major issue as well. and in creating better jobs that are increasing the middle class. That is really important, and to ensure that we are keeping our communities and preventing further displacement, which we're continuing to see in a lot of our communities.
Thank you. David, let me repeat the question for you. What will you carry forward with regards to former Assembly Member Gonzalez's legacy? What will you carry forward if voters elect you to complete her term? And what differences can voters anticipate?
And Cheryl, just 1 or 2 minutes, I'm sorry.
2 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Well, look, former Assemblywoman came from the labor movement and became a labor champion in the state legislature. I think there's no question about that. I don't come from the labor movement, I come from the community. So I will be a community representative, getting things done for the people that I represent in the community. Community needs someone who's going to be focused on making sure our education gap doesn't continue to grow. So I will focus a lot more on education and making sure that we have the resources that we need for our schools to succeed. We've got some of the lower performing schools in this district, and we've got to make sure we stay focused so that these schools get the access to the resources that they need, especially after the last couple of years, which have been tremendously difficult. I actually want to move forward on getting a university in South San Diego done. Something that's been talked about for years, and many people have had powerful positions, including Assemblymember Gonzalez, but no significant progress has happened on that. I'm here in San Ysidro right now, where the community here, when I was running for office first time, said, we've been told time and again that we're going to get a library done, that we're going to have a sidewalk for our kids to walk up to the high school. What's going to be different? And I told them what's going to be different is that I'm going to get it done, because I'm going to be focused on what's happening in this community, not what the folks in power, what the circles in the bubble of those who are influential, but what the community wants. So that's my major difference. I'm focused on what happens in the community, get things done for the people of the community, build up the community, and continue to grow opportunities for our community.
Excellent, thank you. Another round of yes, no's, I don't know, another short round. We'll start with you, Georgette. Do you have a 100-day plan for what you want to accomplish if elected? Yes, no, or I don't know.
Yes.
David, do you have a 100-day plan for what you want to accomplish if elected?
Yes.
David, will you share your 100-day plan with BAPAC so we can share with our members?
Absolutely, yes.
Georgette, will you share your 100-day plan so we can share with our members?
Yes.
Okay. I hope you're taking notes, Ellen. David, do you have a specific plan to work with local elected officials to ensure appropriate implementation of laws passed by you and the state legislature?
Yes.
Georgette, I'm going to ask you the same question, so get ready. But first, while we're still in this mode, David, would you share some highlights, a couple of brief, no more than a minute, highlights of your plan?
Of the 100-day plan?
No, of your plan to how you're going to work with local elected officials to move your initiatives.
I thank you, appreciate that. So because this district represents a couple of different cities, speaking San Diego, National City, and Chula Vista, we got to work with our leaders in those communities. For example, the largest part of this district happens to be Chula Vista. And so in Chula Vista, given my emphasis on wanting to bring a university to this community, working with the land that the city has set aside and focused on bringing this university development, that's the focus that I'm going to take on day one. With our school board members at the different levels, and we've got about 6 different school districts actually in this district. So working with them to make sure that the funding that we set aside through the budget of the state budget, that it's actually being served in the way that serves our local schools and not schools perhaps that don't need that extra assistance. So focusing with them on that. For example, the city of National City, making sure that we have access to our waterfront. It's very limited today. It hasn't grown. And so making sure that the port does the right thing to increase access to our waterfront for our communities of National City. That's one of the issues I'd be working with them.
Thank you. Georgette, here's the question. And as you know, it's a two-parter. First part's a yes or no, I don't know. Do you have a specific plan to work with local elected officials to ensure appropriate implementation of laws passed by you and the state legislature?
Yes.
Will you take a minute to share some highlights of your plan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So starting with the city of San Diego, I actually was talking to Mayor Todd Gloria, who was in Sacramento this week, and really partnering with the city of San Diego to really advance solutions on addressing our unsheltered population. So I know that's something that they're looking at Sacramento for additional support, something that I will partner on closely. Also with the County of San Diego as they're continuing to advance on mental health, which is something that it should be tied to addressing our homeless or our unsheltered population. So, really partner with the county as we move forward in addressing the crisis, making sure that we're continuing to earmark money at the state to continue to build wraparound permanent supportive housing, that it has the wraparound services, and making sure that we're supporting the smaller cities that want to step up on affordable housing, which is one of the biggest challenges just because there's no more redevelopment funds. Want to make sure that we are earmarking support for housing development in our smaller cities, smaller jurisdictions, and then supporting the Chula Vista Bayfront development.
Thank you. Next question. Individual and collective advocacy is often at the center of achieving equity for the Black community. This is true across an array of issues, and it's true for other marginalized groups who've learned from our example and benefited from our efforts. So tell us in 1 minute, what do you fight for? What issues have you advocated for personally and or professionally? And you've mentioned a few now, and this is an opportunity to hone in on those that you want to lift up for this audience. What issues have you advocated for that are key to addressing racial and social inequities that impact Black Californians? And I believe we start with you, David, on this question.
Yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity to reflect on my time in service, in public service, over the last 3 years. And I started an organization, all volunteer, no funding, no one gets paid, nothing, on equity issues, because there was a lot of lip service being paid by people who were in office, but not much being done. I already talked about the vaccine inequity and how horrible that was to our Black community, our brown community, and the immigrant community who did not have access to the type of services. But for example, there was only a few callers on this call when Councilmember Montgomery had a discussion on the disparity of contracting in our city. I called in, I was on that call, I talked to her office, I advocated for setting subcontracting goals that need to be set in our city so that we can have access to those contracts for our minority small business contractors that currently are left out of the system. So sometimes I've always said you don't have to be in a position of authority to try and make a difference. It's what you do when people aren't watching or making a big fuss out of it. Or trying to just be about yourself and patting yourself on the back, but speaking up when you need to. That's what I've learned from the Black community, what we got to continue to do. And what I did when I was on the council, not afraid to stand up and speak up. And I will not do that in Sacramento either. I will speak up for what's right for our communities, not what I'm being told by folks who are in powerful positions.
Thank you. Georgette, do you need me to repeat the question? Happy to do so.
Can you repeat it just to make sure?
What do you fight for? What issues have you advocated for personally and or professionally that are key to addressing racial and social inequities that impact Black Californians?
Yeah, as a forever community organizing, I'm extremely rooted in community and making sure that no matter what space I am a part of, I always work hand in hand with the community with everything that I do. When I was at City Hall, I worked hand in hand with the community. I actually worked when I was the council president, worked closely with, at the time, Assembly Member Dr. Weber to bring a resolution to have the city of San Diego, and I know I worked with BAPAC on this, to bring a resolution to have the city of San Diego in support of AB 392, which was a critical, important resolution because we took it after the county took an official position against it, and we knew that San Diego needed to step up and have the back of what Dr. Shirley Weber was doing on behalf of our community. So I'm very proud that we were able to deliver that and work closely with BAPAC during the redistricting. I got engaged just a little bit in making sure that the city of San Diego created districts that would have our representation for our Black and Brown communities, as well as our Asian community members. So happy that I was able to partner and support the efforts of the community. I worked to advance transit solutions for our youth.
We can hear more about
transit.
that. We can hear more about that.
We'll talk about it later.
Closing,
Yes.
or perhaps it will pop up in our later Q&A.
Most definitely.
I appreciate that. So here, but you're on deck for the next one. Oh, actually, the next one will be a yes or no, and we'll start with you. Despite what's known about COVID-19's disproportionate impact on Black, Latino, Pacific Islander, and Native American people, inequities persist in a variety of ways, in a variety of areas. Yes, no to both candidates, yes, no, or I don't know if you don't have an opinion. Do you feel an obligation to prioritize state response recovery efforts and resources toward communities of color that are hardest hit? Yes,
yes.
No, Georgia.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Yes. First question, this will go to who? I believe David answered the last round first, so Georgette will go with you. California's unexpected $45.7 billion budget surplus provides an opening to fund programs to address systemic disparity issues. What investments will you make to address these inequities, the ones that you care about, or the ones that have been identified by your constituencies in healthcare, for example, in economic development that impacted communities that are, so the impact communities are not disproportionately affected in the next public health or other crises?
Yeah, I believe the blueprint that Governor Newsom has put forward is a good blueprint. I would ensure that we are truly advancing on addressing the digital divide. It is extremely critical. If we were to imagine that us that have access to digital opportunities to be able to connect, let's just imagine for a second that all of that is taken away from us. How do we engage in society? So that is something that we really need to address immediately. And a lot of our brown BIPOC communities have impacted, and we saw the disparity there. Education is extremely important, making sure that our education system is fully supported, and making sure that our kids are prepared and that there's the providing safety to ensure that they're able to go back to their learning environment, but also do it in a way that is fully supportive. Healthcare is extremely important, and we saw the impacts of not having a healthy healthcare system in our communities. So really do want to advance solutions to getting to a system that is a universal system for all our communities, that is accessible equally, no matter of the income that one has. But the system itself is available to all our community members. So that's something that I would also push.
Thank you. David, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I'm okay, Cheryl.
Great, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Black nurses. I was volunteer listening into the COVID equity task force that the county, or I don't know who put together. Fortunately, there was no leadership from government in those meetings, but when the vaccines weren't getting to our communities, the Black nurses stepped up and worked with the churches to get vaccines into the community where they should have been from the beginning, not at these big centers where it made it inaccessible to our community. That's what equity really is. So, and what that means is we've got to make sure we find ways to have more Black Americans in healthcare. We need to make sure that we fund programs like we used to create career pathways for our Black and Brown communities into healthcare. That obviously would help with the inequity of healthcare, but also it creates strong career pathways for our community to be able to be more successful and economically, survive in a place like San Diego. So those are the things I would do on the front of healthcare. On the economic development front, which you talked about, we know that the disparity exists. We now need to make sure that we are holding local governments accountable. So we create those goals for subcontracting and to unbundle these large projects that always go to the same big firms that do these projects so that our smaller local Black, minority, also Latino, by the way, builders and contractors can have access to these contracts and can have access to these opportunities, which they currently are being left out of.
Thank you. We're going to touch on some of that as well. So it's a good foreshadowing of later discussion. Appreciate it. So in last year's budget cycle, there was a push for a $100 million per year health equity and racial justice fund that our government left out of the state budget. There's a push to reinstate this fund in this year's budget. Yes, no, I don't know. David, we'll start with you. Do you see a need for such a fund?
Yes.
Georgette?
Yes.
We'll start with you, David. If elected, what actions will you take to ensure that this funding is a part of the 2022-2023 budget?
Well, hopefully I get elected in April. And with that, you actually have an opportunity to have a voice in that budgetary process. But if unfortunately, because of this resignation, we don't have representation during the budgetary process, by the time the election gets certified in June, we will not have representation and a voice from someone in this community to help allocate that funding and focus on these issues. So if elected, definitely be there to be a voice and to be a vote for this. But it depends on the outcome of the election of when that happens.
Thank you, Georgette.
Yeah, assume that if elected and get to participate in the conversation of the budget, I want to say that it would be something that I would vote for and request that it be included in the budget. But I would also build the support for it because it takes beyond of one vote, right? You need the necessary votes from the other legislators. So I would be proactive in making sure that they too support the adoption of including this request.
Thank you. President Biden signed several pandemic recovery bills. Some of them we know from seeing in the press, the American Rescue Act, the Infrastructure Act, and the pending Build Back Better Act, which provides for economic recovery for all Americans. Georgette, first question to you. In following the federal monies that flow from these bills, particularly as it begins to make its way to the states and down to our region, how will you lead in ensuring that Black Californians, particularly Black people in our region, are recover successfully, are a part of this and can access these opportunities for recovery?
Yeah, so I just stated when I was at the council as the council president, and we were getting the relief resources, we were allocating some of the money, right, to support businesses through the chamber, support rent relief and utility pay and all that stuff. But one thing that we learned pretty quickly, and it wasn't a surprise to me, but when we were giving the money to support the Chamber of San Diego, to hopefully help have it trickle down into our community and our businesses, that wasn't happening, which is why we brought back an amendment to earmark money to the Black Chamber, to the Asian Chamber, and to the Hispanic Chamber, because they were working with the community. And so we need to make sure that as we're spending this money, that we're very intentional of who the money we're giving to ensure that our community gets it, whether being nonprofits that are already working in the community and have the connections and the support and the relationships, but also supporting the businesses that are in our community and in the smaller chambers that are also working with the community. And then we also need to think beyond that, because a lot of it is electronic, and we have the mom and pop businesses that don't have access to technology, and they don't know how to apply, and they're not going to hire a lobbyist. So we need to make sure that we're going to them, that our staff is going to them, and helping them navigate through the application process to ensure that they're benefiting from that. So we need to think beyond the structures that we're so used to and providing the resources, and be a bit more creative to ensure that communities from Southeast, from National City, from Logan Heights area are having access to these resources.
Thank you. David, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I can answer that, Cheryl. Thank you.
Thank you. You will.
Yeah, that whole thing, what happened with those resources, it was a tremendous disappointment and failure to our communities. I actually spent time walking down Imperial Avenue where there were small businesses. I spoke to at least 24 small businesses, and it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody that an institution like a Chamber of Commerce, which is, when we talk about institutionalized issues, institutionalized racism, institutionalized differentiation of people and lack of representation, those organizations, have been part of that institution. So to have given the resources to those types of groups never made sense. And so when you walk and you talk to the actual business owners at their place of business, they will tell you they did not get the support that they needed. And that's because we haven't invested in the organizations and the community groups that actually know the business owners, that know the people. We don't go where people are. We think that just you can sit, at your office at City Hall or in Sacramento and just, put out press releases about the money that's going out. That's not going to get into people's hands. You got to go out there and walk door to door and talk to people and go to where they're at. Go to the local churches, go to the community parks, go to where the community is so we can get them those resources. So I believe we need to invest substantially more in building up organizations in years, not just when we have the crisis, because yeah, you can say, oh, like we're giving money now, but what about when you're building organizations like the many nonprofits and small groups that are happening, that are around our community that don't have the resources because they don't have the big funders in order to operate and to provide the services and the support that our community needs. That's what we need to focus on. It's who are those organizations and how are we going to get them those resources? That's what I would focus on, any future resources in response to this pandemic.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We're going to have another round of yes, no, I don't know. Please remember that I don't know is if you don't have an opinion to offer. One word answers, yes, no, I don't know. And if there are qualifiers, we'll try to catch them later. If we don't catch them in our extended questioning, you can tackle them in your opening remarks. We'll start with you, David. Yes, no, I don't know. Do you support the California Attorney General operating the San Diego County jails until people in the sheriff's custody stop dying?
Yes.
Georgette?
Yes.
Georgette, do you support AB 2343, Dr. Akilah Weber's Saving Lives in Custody Act to ensure that a jail sentence is not a death sentence?
Yes.
David? I can repeat if you didn't catch it. David, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, I did not hear it. I'm sorry.
Do you support AB 2343, Dr. Akilah Weber's Saving Lives in Custody Act to ensure that a jail sentence isn't a death sentence?
Yes.
David, this next question, yes or no, you first. Are Black and brown Californians over-policed?
Yes.
Georgette?
Yes.
Georgette, do you believe there's a notable, this is a two-parter, so you're going to answer both questions with a one-word answer. Do you, with two one-word answers, if that's clear.
Got it.
Do you believe there's a notable increase in crime in our region, and is Prop 47 the cause?
No.
Do you believe
yes
there's a notable increase?
Yes.
Is Prop 47 the cause?
No.
David, do you believe there's a notable increase in crime in our region?
Yes.
Is Prop 47 the cause? Yes, no, I don't know.
I don't know.
Next question. David, do you support law enforcement's call to roll back voter-approved criminal justice reform policies like Prop 47?
No.
Georgette, do you support law enforcement's call to roll back voter-approved criminal justice reform policies like Prop 47?
No.
Here's the questions. Thank you. Community advocates here and nationwide are calling for greater accountability from police and greater investment in community-based non-law enforcement alternatives to address well-documented evidence of racially biased policing. A few more one-word answers. Yes, no, I don't know. We'll start with you, Georgette. Do you support the reallocation of a percentage of police funding to community-based non-law enforcement solutions?
Yes.
David.
Yes.
David, do you support hiring more police? Yes, no, I don't know.
Yes.
Georgette.
No.
Georgette, will you accept campaign contributions from police unions?
No.
David.
No.
On Prop 47, BAPAC's position is that Prop 47 is being, and this I'm quoting the president, pitifully implemented. Pitifully implemented. Question to you, David. What is your commitment to ensure that services and support to help people in their transition from incarceration back into their communities?
2 or 1 minute, Cheryl.
How much time do you need?
Let me try to get it in a minute.
Okay, so
I don't use up.
both of you will have a minute for this question. Thank you.
You know, I'm the youngest of 6, and a couple of my siblings spent time in the criminal justice system and the prison system. And the issue is really personal to me, and I've seen the failures of it in my own family. Certainly, there was no rehabilitation when leaving the system. In their case, I think that's still unfortunately seems to be what's happening. We're now at $100,000 per inmate, and we are having people recidivate. There is much better way we can utilize resources in order to address the recidivism rate. We can give not only education opportunities within the system, but also, an ability to learn a trade or a skill, so that when they leave, they don't just leave with enough for a bus ticket, but actually something else in their hands that can put them in a position to be able to be successful and overcome the barriers that they face as soon as they leave the system, because they have, no ability to land on their feet to actually become the members of society that they desire, because the system is not in place to allow them to do that.
Thank you. Georgette, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I can answer it, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So I too 100% believe that we are miserably implementing Prop 47 in terms of what it promised it was going to do, which is providing enough resources to provide the support for folks that are living the prison system so they can be their best self when they leave. So we need those resources to be allocated. We need the infrastructure to ensure that it's being created so they have the support, whether it be in training, or supporting clinics that are helping folks navigate through their expungement records to ensure that that's being done, education, and connecting folks to real jobs that are going to allow them to build their wealth. All of that in education, obviously, right? But we're not having that infrastructure, has not been fully funded, has not been intentionally established, and we need to ensure that we do that.
Thank you. According to the 2020, welcome back. David, good to have you on camera again. According to the 2020 annual census of state civil service, among state employees earning under $40,000 a year, most are non-white, and among let me rephrase this. According to the census, the annual census of state civil servants, most, I'm going to restate it because it's not phrased in a way I think that can clearly indicate the question. Most state employees who are earning under $40,000 a year are non-white, and most state employees earning over $100,000 a year are white. If elected, this first question goes to you, David, I believe. That's our order. If elected, how will you address the well-documented and ongoing salary disparities between non-white and white state employees?
So Cheryl, can you repeat the question? Because I heard it a couple variations and I just want to make sure I heard it.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And I apologize for that. According to the 2020 annual census of state civil service, most state employees earning under $40,000 a year are non-white. Most state employees earning more than $100,000 a year are white. How will you address this well-documented and ongoing salary disparity between non-white and white state employees if elected?
Okay, thank you. So it's a disparity that we all know is too common in the workplace. That is being described here, happening in our statewide level, which we should definitely be ashamed of that, given that our goal in government is really to create an equitable environment and workplace. And so we need to focus on programs and policies, not just to provide opportunities for growth, which is good, and we should, for folks who are maybe entering the workforce or who are not in management level, but we need to hold our executives accountable so that we have appointments into the positions that are managerial and director level appointments, so that that disparity doesn't continue. One of the things I was able to do, again, on a volunteer basis with our Latino Equity Council, was we asked mayoral candidates here locally in San Diego to take a pledge that their administration, their staff, and their executives, directors are reflective of San Diego. We got Mayor Todd Gloria signed on to that. And then we demanded that we have an annual report on that, so we can see whether or not that's being held accountable. I would like to do the same at the statewide level.
Thank you. Georgette, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Thank you.
Please.
So yeah, so I do know that last cycle, the Assemblymember Cooper tried to introduce a bill that got stalled in the Senate. I think it was AB 316, which was the pay equity state civil service employees, which was really trying to get around this particular issue that you're raising in terms of the inequities, but also making sure that we are diversifying our workforce at the state level in various different departments. So I would definitely support and be a co-signer of that bill if it's brought back, or introduce it to ensure that we are getting advancing solutions to the pay inequities that we constantly see in all workforces, not only the state, but we saw it at the local as well when I was at City Hall, and there was a pay disparity study, and the showing was not transformational. Unfortunately, it led to seeing that women and people of color were getting paid less. So definitely advancing this bill is very critical because it would get to resolving the issues and addressing the disparities, but also increase representation from our underrepresentatives, from women and minority different groups, to ensure that we're diversifying the workforce.
Thank you very much. All right, and you'll tackle this next question first, Georgette. California is the world's fifth, sometimes we say sixth, but still, the economy is big as other nations. And our state employs more than 200,000 people, and we procure hundreds of billions of dollars in goods and services annually. Question: what steps will you take? And you touched on some of it, so we're going to skip the hiring part, but let's talk about the contracting part. What steps will you take to ensure equity in public contracting in our state?
Yeah, unfortunately, we still have the fact that we weren't able to succeed at the ballot last year to undo some of the preventions from really us trying to earmark either contracts to our minority groups per se. Our disparity, it continues to be a problem. So we definitely need to bring that back and undo and ensure that we are reforming the efforts and making sure that we can legally, without having challenges, to ensure that we are pushing contracts to our minority contractors and ensure that we are utilizing state contracts to uplift the economic opportunity for smaller businesses, and not just continue to give them to the same contractors that are very well situated at the state level. So we need to figure out how we become more creative, being that the proposition didn't pass. And I know that Dr. Shirley Weber did a lot to ensure that we were doing affirmative action and being able to bring that back. So that's still a pulse, obviously. So we need to be a bit more creative. And I think the federal government is a good example, as we're able to do some advanced points and be a bit more intentional about that. So that's something that I really want to get to and utilize what we have. But at the end of the day, affirmative action is the key to ensure that we're addressing this very critical issue. And I want to be able to be more proactive on that when I do get to the state level.
Appreciate that. Thank you. David, would you like me to repeat the question? And I just wanted to flag for you that you didn't really talk about equity in hiring previously. You were talking about, and we do appreciate you telling us about the work that you've done as an advocate, but in the office, what would you anticipate? So take both parts, feel free to take 2 minutes. What steps will you take to ensure equity in hiring and contracting within the state of California as a lawmaker?
Thank you. And so undoing Prop 209 is certainly, which has been devastating to inhibit the progress, and we haven't recovered since, would be a step I would take and support placing that again on the ballot, Proposition 16. And as I did then, a couple of years ago, volunteer my time to help that get that approved. That would go a long way in addressing that issue of inequity and ensuring that on the employment and on the contracting side. But while we wait for the voters, and unfortunately the voters have to vote and make the constitutional amendment to this per our Constitution, we should be unapologetic and we should not hold back. And we should be demanding that, especially cities, municipalities, certainly state government, as it is putting together packages to award contracts, that we actually put forward substantial subcontracting goals that are within the limits of the current law, for goods, for services, for professional services, that we do small business setups, because we know that a lot of our business are minority businesses, that we unbundle these large contracts, which, frankly, often go to some of our friends and allies, for example, in labor, but it does not include our Black, Latino, minority contractors. And so we need to make sure that we put those provisions into place with a state contract, and that we find ways legislatively that we compel and we get large cities like San Diego, large school districts like San Diego Unified, to do the same with its large contracts.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we keep answers to 1 minute going forward, because we've got a half an hour left and a whole bunch of other things we want to know. So going forward, I'm going to try to keep my preambles short and ask that you keep your answers short as well. So we'll jump right into it. So David, census data tells us that and it told us in January, reports of census data that we received in January 2020 said that just over 36% of Black Californians are homeowners. And I should tell you that that's a drop from pre-COVID numbers reported by the California Housing Finance Agency, which said about 41% of Black Californians were homeowners. So we've dropped from that, but COVID did impact many, many people severely in their wallets. But this compares with 49% of Latino residents and 66% of API residents and 68% of white residents, 36% homeownership. What's your vision to reallocate or increase the pool of housing funds that will increase Black homeownership? 1 minute, please.
Thank you. We've got to make more opportunities for homeownership available, which means certainly having more housing as California continues to grow. We do have a economics 101 supply and demand issue. And so it will become less affordable for everyone. And so we have to create that supply first and foremost. Second, we've got to make sure that we fund programs that work with our community organizations that we used to have that help the community through the process. It's still a lengthy and unfortunately sometimes predatory type of process. So the trust does not exist there between our community and sometimes the big banks. And so we've got to invest in programs to do so. We got to subsidize some of the loan programs that exist out there so that we can create access to the credit that's needed through the traditional methods. And so that means investments so that if folks want to invest in our communities and if people from the Black community want to invest in our community, that we help support their options for financing through subsidies as we've done before to keep those interest rates low enough so that our families can afford. Those are some of the ways we can do that to achieve more home ownership.
Thank you. Georgette, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would start with financial literacy in our communities, specifically in the Black communities, the Brown communities, but, being that the discussions about Black home ownership, I would keep it just to that, increasing the literacy programs to prep families to take advantage of some of the programs. I know the county launched an initiative I think they allocated $1.5 million targeting the Black community for home ownership. I would love to fight for state budget money to increase those opportunities and bring it to our local region as there's agencies that are stepping up to match that money to ensure that our community, the Black community, has access to the programs that either the county or the cities, if they're stepping up to earmark specific programs to target Black community home ownership. The state should come in and increase the resources. I think that's very critical, but we first need to start with also literacy, financial literacy, which is really important. Banks need to continue being held accountable because they're still making it extremely difficult for Black community members to have access to the loans. So definitely hold them accountable so they're making their loans more accessible, less stringent requirements.
Next question is for you, Georgette. San Diego County data indicates that Black people who make up 4% of the county's population or 45% of the population of people experiencing homelessness in our region. What solutions do you support to address the crisis of homelessness within the county's Black population? And what resources can you leverage as a state lawmaker?
Yeah, so going back to, needing to build more permanent supportive housing, that is extremely critical. We can talk about a lot of different programs and they're important, but if we don't have a place to place folks in that are living in the streets, then they can't go to a tent. They can't go to a motel and whatnot. So we really need to ensure that we are increasing our units that are permanent supportive with the wraparound services. But then secondly, we need to work with the community to ensure that they have the necessary resources to restore their lives and they're able to get back on their feet. I think that's really, really important and very crucial. One thing that I was able to do actually during my final years as a council president is started a program where we partner with PATH, which we are hiring social service providers to do the outreach to the community instead of police. That's something that I'm glad that Mayor Tagloria is continuing to expand, as well as the council. So want to make sure that at the state level, that if we have those programs, that we're actually allocating money to cities that are thinking about different ways, more creative ways, more humane ways in which we're working with the community. If there's already existing programs that I would love to have matching money from the state to expand the support to ensure that we're actually reaching and providing the services, but also the units are very critical.
Thank you. David, would you like me to repeat the questions?
Please, Cheryl.
Okay, it's a two-parter. What solutions do you support do you support to address the crisis of homelessness within San Diego County's Black population? And what resources can you leverage if elected to be a state lawmaker, as a state lawmaker? So I'm asking not just what are you doing as a volunteer, but from the elected position. 2 minutes.
In position. Thank you. Two, you said?
Well, let's say a minute and a half. I want to give you as much
Okay.
time.
Okay.
And it's an important issue. So
All right. Very important, and the most evident or clearest piece of evidence at how our systems are failing the Black community. I mean, there are many, unfortunately, that we can point at, but certainly this one, the disproportionate number is should be not just astonishing, but should be an embarrassment for us in California and certainly here in San Diego. I actually think there is a lot of money being spent, more money than ever before on this problem by the state. And unfortunately, it just is getting worse. And it's getting worse with all of our populations. And as you mentioned, you know, the Black population being substantially, disproportionately being impacted. So I think when we got problems like this one that are that major, it's clear evidence of the systemic injustice that exists in decision makers and in how allocations are being made to solve these problems. I think we need to have people at all levels of this solution, these solutions that are being proposed, that have a lived experience in the Black community. I think that's thoroughly missing because without that experience, you're unable to pick out the nuances of what it's going to take to help someone actually get off the street and stay off the street. Yes, all of those programs that we all talk about in here are important, and we need to invest more, and we need to focus on investing them in the Black community. But when you don't have the cultural perspective and the nuances that are involved with that, that are very different for each of our communities, and when it's this big of a disproportionate impact, it's because we haven't had that focus, and we need to make sure those voices are present.
Thank you. Thank you. I will say that that's an interesting perspective, because what that does in fact imply that we should be hiring more people who can address the issues from the communities that are directly impacted. That's what it sounds like you're saying there. Georgette. No, this would be David. You first. Okay, so you've talked a bit about education, and we're interested in where your views lie in comparison to the California Black Legislative Caucus, which has raised serious concerns about the unique urgent needs of Black children and students in our state. This includes the fact that more than 2/3 of Black children in California are unable to read and write at grade level. And nearly 80% are below grade level in math, and 86% are below grade level in science. And this is coming from California's Black lawmakers. In addition, they report that Black students are subjected to harsh and disproportionate discipline, which would include expulsions, putting them in the school to prison pipeline. And there are increasing reports of incidents of overt racism directed toward Black students in our schools throughout California, again, coming from Black lawmakers. So what is your position on the California Black Legislative Caucus's proposed education plank in the 2023 Democratic Party platform? You are a Democrat. And the recommendations in that plank to address unique urgent needs of Black students in our region and state. And if you're not aware of the plank, feel free to say that.
I'm sorry, I missed the last portion.
I said, if you're not aware of the plank, either of you, if you're not familiar with the Black Legislative Caucus's education plank, please feel free to say so.
I will acknowledge the fact that I am not thoroughly familiar with the plank. Can I still make a comment about that,
absolutely.
Or would you like to share more details about it?
No, absolutely. Please feel free to make a comment.
Thank you. So I think this is critical to my previous response. Actually, the people who are who best can speak to the issues impacting a particular community are those with those lived experiences. The fact that Black legislators have pointed this out and have put forward solutions that they believe are necessary to help address this achievement gap, this disparity, this lack of probably graduation rates, I assume, learning loss, all of that, I think are, for me, as I go into this position in the legislature, being one of 80, you want to look to the folks who understand those issues better. And there's no one better than the Black caucus that represents the community that can provide with reference, with data, with information, and with solutions. So I'm there to be an ally to help not only identify the solutions, but to fund those solutions. So acknowledging again here that need to do some more in-depth analysis on what those things are, but I am assuming that it has to deal with a lot of the systemic issues that are part of all of our systems, which are ensuring that we have Black educators, Black leadership in schools, that we have that focus on of diversity, of bringing in and creating a pipeline of educators in order to be able to be reflective in the classroom and in leadership of our Black community at large.
Thank you. Georgette, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Sure.
Thank you. Would you please?
Yeah, so I too have to say that I'm not fully informed on what the Black Caucus is proposing on education, but I would assume is similar. I do know that our education system is failing our Black and Brown Indigenous kids from making sure that they're graduating. But when they do graduate, that they have the ability to read, be able to continue going to higher education, and making higher education accessible to our community members as well in a manner that they're not leaving with a huge debt, and making it cost efficient is something that is very important. Super supportive and continuing to support the free community colleges, but expand that to 4-year education. Specifically, if we don't have enough resources, target a certain pool of folks, either being our Black community, our Brown community youth, to have higher education opportunities is significant. So that's something that I would work closely with the caucus. But I'm more than committed in making sure that on education that I'm aligning with the Black caucus and what they're hoping to achieve. Obviously, investing in early learning for our kids is really important. So we need to ensure that our schools and our communities have the necessary support, especially the first years when our children are going through education, that they're learning the skills of reading, which is really, really important and pivotal as they continue their growth in education. And I know that's where we're falling behind with our Black youth. So making sure that kindergarten is fully supportive, as those are the moments that are very critical for our youth to learn how to read and then how to succeed in their higher learning, which is really important. And we need to diversify our education system in terms of the educators and the administration, but it needs to go beyond diversifying the administration and education. We need to ensure that it's fully loaded. Mm-hmm.
All right. And we'll direct this next question to you. And I was particularly impressed with your earlier remarks about environmental justice. And so hoping you can expand on this with some actions that you're looking to take. So climate change is having a sustained negative consequences for our state and region. We're in the 3rd year of severe drought, and just a day or two ago, the forecast was that between now and the end of June, we're not going to get much rain, and just generally, it's just very grim. And so what legislation will you support or propose to address California's drought conditions?
Yeah, definitely. I have a big background on addressing environmental justice through the lens of how we're responding to the climate crisis. On water and drought, I mean, we need to do a lot of things in our community. We need to make our communities that lack a lot of infrastructure ready to the response of the climate and severe weather. We need to ensure that we're planting necessary green trees in our community that reduces the heat And so that's something that we'd love to invest in a significant way, specifically communities that are earmarked to be in the front lines of having higher response to the climate crisis. We need to continue funding. Proud that the city of San Diego is moving forward in its pure water system, which is one of the biggest infrastructures that we have. But we also need to support the smaller cities to be able to move forward with their own pure water, and that is to restore the water that we currently use, recycle it, and put it back. That would actually allow us collectively in the city of San Diego to put back 30% of the water would be harvested here locally, which would be huge. But that's only the city of San Diego. Yes, the city of San Diego is huge, but we have other cities. So that's an infrastructure that I would love to support.
Thank you. David, would you like me to repeat the question?
Please do. Yes, please do.
California is in its third year of severe drought, and the forecast for the next few months is very grim. What legislation will you support or propose to address our drought crisis?
Thank you. So it's very water specific. I assume we'll have more conversations about climate crisis in general. So I'll keep it to the water issue, and certainly as chair of the Environment Committee, I was on the City Council, helped push the project forward to net water. So we supportive of that, which is going to make us less reliant on importing water and have us be a little bit more self-sufficient. I do think that we need to help fund more programs for households to replace inefficient water appliances as simple toilets. Those need to be programs that need to be available, to the community free of charge or very, very low cost if there has to be costs associated. But if we want to address the climate crisis and it relates to drought and the fact that we won't have as much water available, I think we need to make sure that that we are using as little as possible and reusing as much of it as possible. So on water specifically, those are the sorts of things that I would look to.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I do wish we did have more time to talk about climate issues, but we don't, given the brevity of this conversation. But we will be submitting questions to you if you could respond to the questions, follow-up questions to you if you could respond in writing. But I do have one more question, and David, you'll go first. And I can't remember which of you touched on it. It could have been both, but South Bay San Diego waterways, we know, are often polluted by sewage and other waste coming from Mexico. And as a state lawmaker on the border, what will be your responsibility to address the issue, and what binational considerations will be top of mind? And are there issues of environmental equity that you'll be considering as well? And this is a question for both of you. David, you'll go first. 1 minute, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing up the Tijuana River Valley. It's an environmental injustice that's been happening for a really long time. I can best explain this to folks who are maybe not living in the South Bay, that Imperial Beach is our beach. That's where our families go to recreate. San Diego is known as a beach town. But people usually think of Mission Beach and Ocean Beach and Pacific Beach, and that's fine, and Coronado Beach. But the beach for the people of this district is Imperial Beach. And the fact that for so long it's been polluted has been really, really shameful. As the state lawmaker, continue to make sure that the resources and funding gets allocated to bring to fruition the plan to prevent from continuing to happen. It's a very ambitious hundreds of millions of dollars that need to be invested, and it has to come from all levels of government. I've been advocating in Mexico City as a border council member for 8 years. I've been advocating in Washington, D.C. Both of those federal governments need to be involved with that resolution of that, and looking forward to being an advocate, continuing to be an advocate for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Georgette, do you need me to restate the question?
No, I got it. Yeah.
No,
I also want to say thank you for acknowledging that this district goes all the way to the border, and there is a life at the border that we need to really ensure that we're recognizing, which is one of the things that I'm extremely excited about. When I was at the council as a council president, I also was very engaged in going to Mexico City to build those relationships and really ensure that we're addressing some of the impacts at the border, whether it being the Tijuana river sewage, whether also improving the infrastructure to improve air quality at the border, which is one of the areas that is highly polluted. For me, the excitement is that I want to be extremely vocal in making sure that we're recognizing the border beyond the economic opportunity. We got to uplift the human impact that we see constantly. There are San Diegans that live on the border in Tijuana that can't afford to live here, and we have to improve the border crossing. We need to ensure that our environment is being taken care of, whether it be the sewage, the impacts that the border wall has done in terms of building it to the natural habitat that we have there is very significant, that I will love to be more proactive, and this gives me an opportunity to do so. I want to make sure that we're fighting hard to earmark the money that is needed to address the sewage on both sides, on the US and the Mexico side. That's very critical. But there are other natural disasters there.
Yes, there's a lot. Since we're talking about the border, yes, no, I don't know. Do you believe there is anti-Black bias in our federal immigration policies?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Question, or I'll start with a statement. Unjust U.S. immigration policies like Remain in Mexico, known as MPP, and Title 47 have left thousands of Haitian migrants trapped in limbo in Mexico. And thousands were deported without the opportunity to even make their asylum claims, which was their legal and human right. Question, we'll start with you, Georgette. What will you do as a state lawmaker to call attention to this issue and to improve treatment of Haitian migrants and migrants from African nations and elsewhere in the diaspora? 1 minute, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for asking that question. Yes, absolutely. There's been a huge negative impact to the folks that are trying to come here as asylum seekers that are still waiting, the Asian community members. Work closely with Christina Griffin on trying to support providing some of the resources. But I'm going to be a strong vocal, active vocal person to utilize my position as a legislator to hold our legislators that are representing us at the federal government to do much more than what they're currently doing. I want to stand with the community to ensure that they're representing the border communities, making sure that we are bringing the resources that we need to improve the vetting process so the community can be vetted immediately and be allowed to have their day at court to be able to come here and seek asylum. And also making sure that the resources, that the infrastructure is needed at the border is there. Right now, we don't have an infrastructure that is healthy for the community. Community members are having to step up to provide food, shelter, and blankets, bikes, so the community can move around in Tijuana. So we need to make sure the government is stepping up and supporting it with resources to build that infrastructure at the border.
Thank you. David, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
I think I can answer it, Cheryl. Okay. Thank you. So I would say the question actually really just exemplifies your previous question, which is there Black bias? And there absolutely is. We're seeing it literally like now, today, as we've seen, refugees and asylum seekers from Russian, Ukrainian, this unfortunate circumstance that's happening there, as they're found their way now to the border. And the response has been, I would just say, a little bit different than it's been for our Haitian brothers and sisters. So very, very clearly a bias there. And so as you asked about what can we do in the position, and so continue certainly to advocate that the federal laws are appropriately implemented in a just way to all, no matter who you are or where you come from. And that'd be first and foremost. And second is the humanitarian effort that needs to take place from our side. And we get impacted a lot in San Diego County. We need to make sure that our state is recognizing that and that it's different for us because we are a border community and we have this impact, and that we need to provide the support, and the state needs to step up to back up the county of San Diego even more.
Thank you. We've got about actually 3 minutes left, but I'm going to take 3 of them, and you'll have 2 minutes each for your closing, which means we're going over 1:30. David, is that going to work for you?
Yeah, outside where I'm supposed to go, so I'm good.
You're parked outside where you're supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm gonna ask another question, because this is a biggie for all
right.
It's hitting all of us in our pocketbooks. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, this was in a February 2nd, 2002 report, SDG&E charges San Diego higher rates than any other city in the United States. I just want that to sit with you for a second. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of creating a publicly owned municipal power utility in our region, like Sacramento has done? And 1 minute each, and we'll start with you, David, since you ended last time. Advantages and disadvantages of creating a publicly owned municipal power utility.
Thank you. And I was proud to be on the council in San Diego Community Power Forward. And the reason is, when someone holds monopoly, it's not, you don't have to be, I'm an economist, but I don't think you have to be an economist to understand that all the power lies with that entity that holds full role. And so is why that is the con of monopoly. Pros, the pro having an alternative is that with competition, the opportunity for rate to be noise and to be appropriate.
David, excuse me, I apologize.
That's the pro.
Excuse me, David, I apologize, but we're having feedback. There's some echoing going on. So I just want to encourage you to hit your points, maybe then backfill with your descriptions, because we're missing a lot of what you're saying and we don't want to miss your positions. So, if you could just hit your high marks, and then you still have time to give some explanation, but I just want to let you know we're having a little problem with audio.
Is it a little better now?
Yeah, maybe. Try again, okay. Start over.
Sure. And I just said, I was proud to be part of forming community power from the city when I was there. But now, and the reason why is because of a monopoly, as SDG&E is, and is the only provider in San Diego County of electricity and energy. They have the power to control. So the pro, I think that was your question of having alternative, is that you get competition and you get a provider of power first that's provides perhaps more clean energy first and foremost, but second, that can compete, and you get better pricing for our customers, for our people of San Diego. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Definitely, we heard all of that. Okay.
Thanks.
Georgette, did you want to tackle the question, please? Or if you would.
Yeah.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of creating a publicly owned municipal power utility in our region?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, and definitely recognizing that we pay the highest bills, the cost to provide electricity as a consumer of, because San Diego Gas and Electric is the provider and the only provider that we have, which goes to the benefits. I'm also very proud that as the council president, I was able to bring forward the conversation of creating the community power opportunity for our region, and which council members had the opportunity to vote for. So happy to have done the work to bring it forward. Very supportive of creating an option. We do need to diversify who's providing energy in our region. So to be able to provide that option is something that can really pressure San Diego Gas and Electric to be a more competitive agency for the consumer. And then also the possibility of the publicly owned municipality utility well, also the idea is that we would be creating energy that is clean. So the option is clean versus what San Diego Gas and Electric provides, which is very an open form of electrification that they provide for us, is something that is really beneficial if we really are going to reduce air pollution in our region. So that's something that is benefit. The fear is that it's something new that government is getting into, right? We need to make sure that it's done in the right way, and take the time that it creates the infrastructure. So we are living to those requirements that we're saying we're going to be better, more competitive, and provide that energy that is clean. So not having those infrastructures in hand can be fearful and could be dangerous for the consumer.
Appreciate that. Thank you both for that. So both of you have alluded to, David, you most specifically, about empowering and listening to Black voices. And so I just want to take this last few minutes before we go to your closing statements, because we have reached to the end of our time, to probe there a little. So, and wanting you to be as specific and candid as possible. So specifically, and we'll start with you, Georgette, to whom do you specifically look for insight and guidance on issues of concern to Black Americans generally, and Black San Diegans and people in our region generally? And that means specifically, issues of concern to Black Americans generally and Black people in our region specifically. And name names. To whom do you look?
Yeah, as always, I mean, I have to start with, I worked extremely close with Council Member Monica Montgomery Stepp when I was at City Hall. I would say she was my strongest ally, and I was her strongest ally in advancing some of the issues that we were able to succeed. Would be somebody that I still constantly connect with, and making sure that I'm supporting the efforts that she's trying to achieve at City Hall now, and consider her my friend. In the community, Dr. Kira Green, who's executive director of CPI, somebody that is a close friend as well, Christina Griffin, as well as Ramla Sahid and Layla Aziz, who was some folks that are all close friends of mine, but also people that are strong pillars in their various communities. And Ellen Nash, somebody that I also look up to and would consider somebody that is a strong ally.
Thank you. David, to whom do you specifically look for insight and guidance on issues of concern to Black Americans generally and Black people in our region specifically? Name names.
Thank you. Over the years, I've really admired the work of Roz Winstead and Ellen Nash, who specifically on the issues of contracting and economic opportunity, and the unfortunate limits or disparity that has existed over the years. There's a veteran, his name is Ronnie Taylor, who isn't very well known, but is someone that I go to in the community. Certainly someone who I really admired, and who actually brought me into to BAPAC to be a member, was Dr. Willie Blair, who I had tremendous admiration. And even after, he was not in this line of work, we would get together for coffee to talk about issues. And they were some of the best conversations that I had. There's a few other folks. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on specific names, but certainly, I'm looking to BAPAC, as I've done in the past, to identify issues, and will continue to do so, identify issues, solutions, and leaders who can be part of our institutions of change to create that change. So those are the folks who some of the local pastors of the churches in this district. Actually, there's a lot of Black churches in our community. I have one a church. The pastor unfortunately passed away, Dr. Emmanuel Whipple, here at Calvary Baptist Church. But others, pastors are also important in those conversations. So
Thank
Yeah.
you. All right, David, we'll go with you first for this question. What is your record of employing Black staff while serving in the city council as for the city of San Diego?
Yeah, I had a Black staff member on a member of my team. Try to keep it as reflective of the diversity of our district. Also, a Filipino American immigrant. I think it's important to try to achieve that representation.
Thank you. So you were in council 8 years? Thank you.
Yes, from 2000.
Hired one Black staff person.
From 2010 to 2018, correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Georgette, what is your record of employing Black staff while serving in the city of San Diego as a council member?
Yeah, I had Karina Johnson and Marcus Bush.
So two.
And we also, I believe, two, and then we had some interns as well that were intentionally brought in.
Thank you. And you were in the council how long?
4
years. All right.
Mhm.
To both of you, David, actually, Georgette, we'll start with you since you answered last time. If elected to the assembly, what specific measures will you undertake to recruit and promote qualified Black staff, including policy staff, in your Sacramento and district offices? 1 minute, please.
Yeah, no, I would be very intentional, just like I did when I came in. It was very intentional who I was bringing in and who I was providing opportunity. For all 4 years that I was at City Hall, my staff reflected the community that I was set to represent, and that's what I'll do in the 80th. Would definitely recruit from the Black community, which is very important, and we'll work with all of you to ensure that we're hiring the right people, but also take it beyond that. Right, we need to ensure that we are utilizing the opportunity to nominate folks to positions of making decisions. So our boards and commissions are also opportunities at the state level that we should open up the door to our Black community to be elected. So I'll be a strong, active nominee of our opportunities to engage in that as well.
Thank you. I first want to thank BAPAC members for the thoughtful questions that are popping up in our chat. And we also have questions, I believe a couple that have come in from Facebook Live. We're not going to pose those questions here now, but we will send follow-up questions to the candidates and look to elicit some responses to those. But we've come to the end of our time together in this part, the Q&A, and each candidate now is invited to make a 2-minute closing statement. I would ask if you think it appropriate to, if you want to lift up some things that you didn't get a chance to talk about, but in particular, ways to distinguish yourself from your opponent here today, because it seems like you were saying a lot of the same things. And so if there are ways that you can identify distinguishing positions on issues, please do. We welcome what more you care to tell us about your qualification or expanding on your views of the issues we've discussed. And in particular, in your 2 minutes, your vision for the future of our region. David, since you went first last time and not by choice, let's give you the opportunity.
I went second.
You went second
Cheryl,
last time, not by choice. Pardon me.
And I also
would like.
I also didn't get a chance to respond to your very important question about what to do going forward to have Black representation in staff and policy.
I beg your pardon. Oh, I beg your pardon. Let's go back. You're saying that I neglected to ask you a question. Let me give you that opportunity. So what specific measures will you undertake? I apologize, David.
Yeah.
If elected to the assembly, this is important.
Yeah,
no, I don't want to leave that out.
No problem.
I apologize.
No problem. But it's a very important.
It is. So let me get it out.
Yeah, and it's a very important one because we need to. Thank you. We need to be held accountable to that, and our pledges that we make to all the voters, to BAPAC today, to the folks that we speak to. And so this is an important question because the accountability needs to be there going forward. And so I expect to be held accountable on what I tell you and what I say I'm going to do, because I'm going to do what I say. And so, one of the things I was able to do is institutionalize something that I put together in my office, a little fellowship strong internship program to try and bring people from our community, diverse communities, into City Hall, and then try to get them into the positions. And so I want to continue to do that. I specifically commit to hiring representation from the Black community in positions of like in Sacramento or locally to help me make policy decisions. Because as I said earlier, if you don't have those voices at the table, you don't have that perspective and that lens, then you miss out. So that's what I plan on doing. And now I can do my closing statement.
No, not quite. First, thank you. Thank you for calling me out and making sure that we got you on the record. I appreciate that. But the reason why we're not going to take opening statements yet is the BAPAC president is wanting acknowledgement now. So I'll turn the floor and the mic over to her and then circle back for our closing statements. Ellen.
Yeah, I just want you to think about Georgette. David, I've known both of you. David, we go way back, long time. And as you're including, thinking about your closing statement, I really want you to include a thoughtful statement that includes some of these points. We have worked a long time, and we have worked with you in your elected official roles. And what we and from a Black community, and particularly BAPAC, we're somewhat disappointed in the deliverables when it comes to the Black community. And so would like to ask you this time around, as the newly elected assembly member, what could be, or what would it look like? Or what would be different in terms of your advocating? This will be a pivotal position. You'll be advocating for people of color, but particularly for Black people. What do you see that can be different, particularly based on the context of the questions that we've asked you today? Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And David, just to be clear, you have the option to go first or last, since Georgette had the option last time.
Sure, I'll go last, that's fine.
Okay, Georgette, we put a lot on the table, what we're wanting to cover, so we'll take 3-minute closings from each of you. And if you can take less time, please feel free.
Yeah, for sure. So once again, thank you for this very fruitful conversation today in terms of getting to know us and how we see the race, and more importantly, the issues that our communities are faced with, right? Someone that has committed her entire life on working for environmental, social, economic justice for our communities. I did it as a community organizer, as a public policy advocate. I did it when I was at City Hall, and I want to do it when I do get to Sacramento and really fighting for our communities. And I appreciate Ellen for that particular question and us being mindful to really be specific. For me, I want to make sure that I fight hard for our community, for the Black community in Sacramento, to ensure that we are earmarking more money for home ownership. I think that's one area that is very significant, but making sure that it's targeted to a certain population, not just put it in, hope that it's going to be successful. Very much committed and making sure that I'm fighting for more resources for first-time home buyers, but specifically in the Black community. That's something that I can strongly commit to. Education, environmental justice. Those are two areas that I really want to also uplift as an assembly member. Environmental justice from the lens of the conversation on the climate crisis, but also making sure that we are advancing environmental justice within that conversation. That is critical because Black communities, brown communities are faced with impacts on the climate. They've been impacted already, and they're going to continue to do so if we don't provide solutions and centering environmental justice in those conversations. So that is something that I really want to be engaged in as I move forward into Sacramento and representing our South Bay communities. Housing overall, beyond home ownership, We need to ensure that our communities that we're building housing that is affordable, that we're providing resources to prevent the loss of affordable housing, which is something that is currently happening. And we don't have a pipeline of money that supports prevention of current affordable housing stock, which is why we're losing a lot of our communities and facing displacement or gentrification. Education, we need to provide the resources for educational institutions to be fully supported, from teachers, diversifying the teacher pool, but also the administration. It's really important. Mental health is one thing that our community, we didn't get to talk about that, but there's a lot of trauma in BIPAC communities. It's been historical. So we need to uplift mental health support in a significant way, that it's not taboo in our communities, but it's something that is the norm, something that I really want to be engaged in as well. And I commit that this is my agenda. This is the work that I want to do. I want to make the state work for our communities and have that real tough conversations that we cannot continue business as usual, which I'm going to be a strong advocate for. And I look forward in having the honor to earn the support of the constituents in the 80th, and making sure that that we move forward collectively in changing the discourse at the state level.
Thank you. David, 3 minutes, 30 seconds, comparable to Georgette's.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for taking time. That the aspect that I've done, you've got to have accountability. I think that today is the beginning of that. So Ellen, I think the accountability starts today with what we do and what we say we're going to do. And I look forward to that accountability, being held accountable, because we cannot continue the way it's going. We cannot have representation that is just a continuation of this representation. Someone who's focused on changing things happening in Sacramento, for all of the progression and progress that we talk about in Sacramento, where are our communities? They are still significantly behind. They're in our prison system. They're not getting the college education that they need. They are being left behind when it comes to healthcare. Where are the jobs for our community? Where are the contracts for our small business owners? That is all being left behind. And so the accountability needs to happen, but it starts with changing the direction that we've been going in the state. And we need representation from someone who's going to stand up on those issues on behalf of the community first and foremost, and that's going to be accountable. So when I talk about focusing and doubling down on education in this state, what needs to happen is yes, but look to the Black Legislative Caucus and what are the initiatives that should be funded as part of our education funding that needs to increase so that our achievement gap doesn't continue to grow. How are we going to hold the state accountable when it hands out big contracts so that it's not the people who are getting those jobs? Those are the sorts of things that I'm looking to do. How are we going to actually address the homeless issue so that we're not just cycling people in and out of jail for 72-hour hold, but actually providing them with the mental health, substance abuse, the shelter they need to be able to become stable? How are we going to provide type of incentives that our community needs, that our Black community can become homeowners and be fully participating in our economy in a way that's real? Those are the things I'm looking to get done. And all that means is it's leadership that is accountable to the community first and foremost. What we've been doing does not work. It's failing our Black community. It's failing all of our communities. And that's why I'm running for this seat, because we need representation that will stand up when we need to stand up and call out sometimes even our own leadership that thinks things are okay, but they're not. So I look forward to serving in that way, this community. And I really appreciate the time for being here.
Thank you. And thank you both, David, Georgette, for your time, for being here, for answering our questions in your authentic way and taking time to think about those issues that impact all communities and that are of particular concern to Black people who live in the region. We will be sending you our follow-up questions, and I would hope that you will return them when you send us your 100-day plan, hopefully by this coming Friday, because we want to post this information on the BAPAC website. And we're going to post it when we get it. So if we don't get it, whomever we get it from first is going to get posted, and whoever sends it to us next, we'll post that as well. And thank you for your careful attention, BAPAC members, friends, and allies. For those of you who live in the 80th Assembly District, thank you in advance for voting in this critical special election. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and now turn the mic over to BAPAC San Diego President, Ellen Nash, for her closing remarks. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you all for being here today. We do have the Honorable Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, with us, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge and have our Secretary of State give us some words of wisdom and comments to the candidates, if she would like, or comments to our voters. Our own Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber.
Thank you, Ellen. I was trying to sneak on and just relaxing here at my house and enjoying the things. So I took down the California Secretary of State in hopes that nobody would know SN Weber. But nonetheless, it's good to be with you guys. It's always great to know that you're having these forums and to hear those who plan to serve in the legislature make some comments. It is critical that this community and the issues you've raised are important issues, because representation does matter. And I can tell you from having been in the Assembly as well as now in Secretary of State, and having people who look like you in positions of power and influence and who are committed to you as well. That hopefully will get the support of whoever's elected in the 80th district, and that becomes important, because when you're in a place like that, 41 votes count, and every vote is important. And so it's good that a community is watching, and when you've been watching, BAPAC has been watching and supporting, and those things are important. Everyone should vote. We know we're in a critical period of voting right now. We're fighting like crazy in the Secretary of State's office to make sure that those who have put in bills and things across the nation don't creep into California. We're voting to save the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And this is extremely important for Black folks, because we know how hard we fought just to get the right to vote. And so it's going to be important that everyone shows up. And when we do, we show up, we show out, we know that, and we get the results. And so I'm going to Los Angeles in the morning to several churches to encourage those folks to basically vote, to turn out the vote, that despite all the negative stuff we hear going on, it is our power of the vote that really matters and counts, and that it is our voice that we have to express ourselves. And so our folks fought too hard to get the right to vote for us to turn our backs on it. So we're going to vote, and it doesn't matter how long we stand in line. It doesn't matter if no one gives us a glass of water in Georgia. It doesn't matter whether they try to make us have various kinds of limitations on vote by mail in other states. We are going to vote because we have fought to get it, and we know the power of it. So I just want to thank those who were here today and a part of this that's there. We'll be in the community too, raising the issue of voting with BAPAC and other organizations, because that is our power, and we will not give it up for anyone. And so thanks to Georgette and to David for being on panel, two great candidates. We look forward to them serving us and serving us well, whoever's chosen. So once again, thank you so very much. And I appreciate always BAPAC having these forums, and I do my best to try to hear what folks have to say. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber. And before we leave, we want to make sure we have our timelines clear. So the vote for this is a special election, and the vote will take place on April the 5th.
April 5th is the election, yes.
That is
Okay.
correct.
All right.
And you
April
will get a ballot by mail. It will be vote by mail, as well as you'll have an opportunity to go into the polls and to turn it in early. So you should be getting your ballot fairly soon, but if you haven't already gotten it. And April 5th is the primary, okay?
So now there's the June primary. So we voted 3 or 4 times this year. My goodness. So there's the June primary, right?
There's a
for,
June primary, there's a November major election. We have multiple elections on April 5th. Since I took Secretary of State, I guess they thought I like voting. We have had voting almost every month. We have four elections going on April 5th. And it's going to be an interesting experience that's there. We know we're going to get one additional member in the Black Caucus because there's only one person running in District, I think, 11, Frazier's district, and we have an African-American woman running. And so she will definitely win come April 5th.
Excellent. And thank you, Dr. Weber, for clarifying that. Just a couple of more announcements and we're going to go. I wanted to announce that BAPAC has been engaged in outreach around mortgage assistance, not just rental assistance, but this is actual mortgage assistance where we're ensuring that residents, particularly Black residents in San Diego's, can retain their homes. And so we would like you all to reach out. You can go to our BAPAC website. You can reach out to me, of course, and others. We have a team, a great outreach team in place. And if you know of people on this call that are having challenges with their mortgage assistance, this program has already helped several Black people that we know catch up on their mortgage and they can retain their current status in their mortgage, as well as keeping them, of course, their families in their home. So we wanted to remind you of that. If you know people that are in those situations, to reach out to BAPAC. You know where to find me, and we will certainly get them help to a HUD specialist to ensure that they're able to hold on to their homes, which is a part of our generational wealth. And in honor of Women's History Month has been great to Black women. We have, and I just want to acknowledge, we have now Dr. Tina King has been selected as the president of the San Diego Community College Continuing Education program. She's replacing our own Dr. Carlos Cortez. I'm so happy about that. We have Danielle Moore, who has been selected to serve on the Unified Port, the Board of Commission, our Port of Commission. She was just newly elected for that, and we're so happy for that. We have Elise Pipkin Allen, who was just elected or awarded a Hall of Fame by the Black Women's Collective. We have Lisa Harris, who was just acknowledged as the Chief Financial Officer of the Year by the San Diego Business Journal for the San Diego County Water Authority. And we have Miss Regina Evans, that also, I'm going to share more about her appointment, but it is huge as well. So Women's History Month has been awesome to Black women this particular month. And so we wanted to acknowledge all of them for their commitment to serve the state of California, to the city of San Diego, the county of San Diego, in the way that you do. There's also an affordable housing project that is being launched. And there's 3 initiatives that I want you all to be aware of. Number 1, we're lifting up an urgent care center in Southeastern San Diego, our first urgent care center in Southeast San Diego. We're lifting up a project, building ownership of a project by the Nile Sisters, who are doing a great job training culturally competent CNAs and other health professionals in the delivery of health services. We have a training program there. The third program we're lifting up is the Valencia Park Business District program, which will house the green industry program that's under the leadership of Mr. Eddie Price. We're lifting those projects up for funding and support. You'll hear more about them, but we have some great work that's on the way, and we wanted you to be aware of them. I don't think I've left anything out. It is 2:00. We did it. And
Ellen.
I thank you all for being here. Is there someone that has their hand up? Ken?
Sam?
Yes?
Yes. Quickly?
I've already made that announcement, Sam, because I like everybody to get out of here at 2:00.
No, I just had something quick.
Okay, one minute.
Yeah, well, 10 seconds. You forgot to acknowledge yourself for being recognized by the Black Chamber of Commerce. So we need to do that for you because you recognize everyone else.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for a great forum. We will respond to all of those. We'll send all the questions in to the candidates that we didn't get to today that we can respond to. Yes.
Real quick, it's Darwin Fishman. We were at
Yes.
the Attorney General's office yesterday in Sacramento, and we
Oh,
want to
yes.
officially announce that with the state auditor's report, it's not enough. We've had 5 people die since it's come out, 2 people in the last week. We're officially the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego and North County Equity and Justice Coalition. We're going to the supervisors meeting on Tuesday, and we're asking them to support the Attorney General taking over immediate control over all San Diego jails. And we're encouraging BAPAC and everyone else to join us with this work, saying that the state needs to intervene immediately and hire a special master to oversee all jails in San Diego County. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fishman.
Mhm.
Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll see you next month. Take care.